Okay, this is going to be a little bit different video than what you're used to seeing. I got some watercolors in the mail not long ago, and I did a review on just what they looked like. Now, I still haven't played with them a whole lot, but that's what I had bought. Okay, and they were on a really good deal. And as you recall, I went ahead and got the pencils also and the brush markers. Now, I also had, when I started digging, some other watercolors. Now, this is not the other watercolors. This is both groups. So I already had, now that's an acrylic, that needs to go somewhere else. I already had the Artist Loft, and I have just a handful of the Cotman by Winsor Newton. And then what I just got was the Castle Arts. So I was like, okay, so how do I use these? What I found out, and this was, because I am brand new to watercolor, and that's why I want to share this with you. I found out that you make your own little watercolor pots, okay? So I have all this, and I sat down last night and I started making my little pots. Now, what does that mean? These little things right here, these are the half-sized ones. You can get them on Amazon. I want to say it was like $7 for 50 of them. And then they actually sent like 4 extra. I don't know what the deal was with that. And in this little package was 2 sheets of magnets. So because they sent me extra of these, I found that I had a magnet strip. So I just cut a couple extras, actually 4 extras, to work for the 4 extras that they sent. Then I sat down and I used, and you can do this however you want, but I have this really old stencil. And so I sat and I started drawing around to make all the squares. And then I thought, well, but I'm not going to be able to put these right there and see what's going on. So I thought, okay, now I don't know. So then I started color swatching a little bit down the side just to see what all the different shades were. Then I finally decided what I was going to do was do each one of these separate, write the color name on it. Look what I did. Look at that. Now, this is an old tin from something else, and it's very much too big for what I'm doing. But I took, and you can see there how I just took the paint, just squeezed it in there. Just squeeze it in. Then, now this is after setting overnight, and I have heard that it can take up to a week for these to really firm up all the way through. But I took my marker then, and I believe it was this marker, the Sharpie, that actually writes on this plastic, and it's staying, okay? So I wrote the name that was on the front of the tube. Then I put what company it was. So that way if I use it all up, I know which one to go back to. And you can see here, like some of them had longer names. All right. Some of them, let's see, some of them had really long names. I'm looking for the one that wraps all the way around. There's one of them that, yeah, see, like this one, that name is longer, and I could barely get the number on there. But I'm telling you, like ultramarine had to wrap around the side. And like some of these hues, that's a Winsor Newton. So it also had the name plus a series number. So just put all your information on there. Then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to sit down while I'm watching TV, and cut each one of these out. And they will match up to each one of these little pods. Then I can go through and tape them on here, or smaller tin if I end up finding one. But if I end up with this one, that is okay too, because once I get all these in front of each color and then stack them in there next to each other, and the markers that I used, this one that I used on the plastic does not rub off with water, and once it's dry, you know what I'm saying? And then this one, this is a zig ball. I used it to do the lettering here, because if it gets wet, it's permanent. It's not going to move around on the paper. You know what I'm saying? So, and this is a hot press instead of a cold press. It's a hot press watercolor paper. And then I've got this brush from my painting days. Now this is an angle brush, and it's going to be a staple in my watercoloring. But look how I've got room. So I may go ahead and use this tin and just move all these up. I've put them in a color order that I like. But see, I can move all this up. And then I've got room down there for some brushes. I love this little water bottle. I got this years ago in like a 3-pack or a 6-pack from Joann Fabrics. And I love just throwing the water on here and using it to mix or whatever. So I've got room for that down in here. So the more I'm looking at this, I may go ahead and just use this tin. Now, look what else I found in my supplies. This, yeah, Old Devil's Egg lift-out container from way back when. And I used to use it as a palette. I think I have 3 of these. So that may or may not be something to also be thrown in. But anyway, I just wanted to show you that. I think it's a cool little thing. I may throw in a palette knife, but I may actually throw in one of my plastic ones. Okay, so you can get these cheap plastic ones, and I may actually throw that in because I don't have to worry about it accidentally digging into those. So I like the flat one for in there. And then as I look around at my other supplies, you know, we always have all these extra supplies. Here's a brush that's on the end of a water tube. Okay, see here? You just put your water in here, and then you can go to painting. So that would be good for big backgrounds. There's another one that looks like it's a size smaller. Once you take a top off, be very careful in putting it back on, because you don't want to end up bending some of these bristles backwards. That will probably go in here. Yeah, I will. What I'll do is I will fill some of these with water and give them that test on the side to make sure they're not going to leak. And that's how I'll decide which ones do and don't go in my water. Here's another package that I have. And it's this brand here, I think. Maybe not. But yeah, there are so many different brands. And this one actually has ink or something in it. So, yeah, just play with stuff. See what you want to do. Whatever you put in your tin, though, don't put it in loose like this, because that will get all messed up. Now, with my brush, I'm not as concerned. But with these, they're a finer tip bristle. And so once they're bent up, you could really damage those. So be kind of careful with that. So yeah, I'll probably put this one in. This is a larger one. That's a medium one. Here's a little bitty one. So yeah, the more I'm looking, I'm gonna need this big of a tin. I was thinking a tin that held old dominoes, one of those old metal tins would work. But now the more I'm getting into this, I'm seeing how this may be much better for me. Always gonna need like some sort of a fine liner brush for little tree stems and stuff. Something like this that I can mop around with or soften. So anyway, that's probably gonna kind of be my supplies. And then I'm thinking, because I have extras, I may take some of these paints and mix them myself and put them in and just see what I end up with. But anyway, yeah, that's kind of it. But I'm looking forward to playing with some watercolor, and I think that this will help me in some of my books where I color, that those pages are thicker. I'm going to be able to get in there and really have fun. So anyway, again, the watercolor paints that I bought last were Pastel Arts. Excuse me. And these are the colors I have. All right. And I did put on there, you know, the actual names. Now I didn't put who the maker was on this, because if it's got, like I have 2 cobalts, I know if I run out of one to look for the one with the number or without. Okay, so I didn't put all that information on here, but I did try to leave a little bit of fade so I would know how does that color fade. All right, so anyway, like I said, short video, but excited to see what I can do here. Now this mat that is right here, this crafter's mat, is exactly that. It's a crafter's mat. So while we're looking at all these fun supplies, let's grab a palette knife. I actually want a metal one for this. Let's grab some paint. What do you think we need to mix? What if we mix some purple? Because I feel like there's never enough purple in our paints. And now, while we're talking color, red and blue make purple, right? Well, but what shades of purple? And for any of you that have been around me for a while, you know I love my purples. So let's see. All right, so all 3 of these are Castle Arts. Have some pots here. Let's do an experiment and see what we get. So I'm gonna mix on my mat, and I have a paper towel handy. When you're color mixing, put down your light color first. Why? Because it takes a whole lot more of the light color than it does the dark color. Okay? So, whoops, this is Artist Loft, and I want to use Just Castle. And you might say, why Just Castle? And the reason for that is that as I'm blending, if I run out of this color and I want to do it again, I know what paints to pull. Okay, so I can write on the side of this little container that I did. See, there's 2 little bubbles of color, and here's our 3rd little bubble of color. So that means I did 2 whites to 1 purple. Does that make sense? That's the mix ratio. So if I ever want to mix this color again, I do 2 parts white to 1 part purple, and I should get a color that's pretty close to this. Okay? Getting that all mixed up, and I could have mixed a whole lot more than this. In fact, let's do, because if I'm going to mix and fill a pod, I want to fill a pod. So what did we do? We did 2 parts white. So I'm going to do it again. So I'm going to do 1, 2 parts white. And if your parts are smaller or larger, it doesn't matter as long as you're using your same recipe. 2 1 part purple. Now, let's see how close that is to the first one. Okay, that'll be a little bit of a deal here, won't it? See how close we get to that first shade. And then I will mix them all together. But anytime you're mixing, write down your recipe, and then when you go back and you get ready to do it again, it just gives you a jump start on figuring out what you're doing if you're doing something specific. And I can write the recipe on the back side of these little containers, and you can see that is getting pretty close. Okay, so that's awfully close to what our first one was. If I kept mixing, it might be closer, but I'm going to go ahead and mix those together. I'm wiping the paint off of the palette knife, and then I'm going to go in and mix again. You just want it really, really mixed up well. Okay, so that's the reason for cleaning off that palette knife. Just squish it down and clean it all off. See, that's most of it. And then by picking it up on the back of the knife, I will be able to drop it in to that little spot. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and go the front. But that's all watercolor is just your mixed up paints dried out. That's what those little palettes are that you buy in the store for like $5 or so. That's all this is. And you could see I could have put more in there yet. Okay, and then you can give it a good tapping. Now when I tap, the camera may move, so be warned. Okay, so there's that one. And then, because I've got this out, I'm going to go ahead and get my supplies back out. Drop some water on. See, just cut a little hole in the end of your bottle, whatever kind of bottle you use. And again, I'm going to get out my angle. Now this is called a soft grip or soft touch. This is soft grip. This is a 3/8 inch angle. See how it's angled? So this is called the toe, and this is the heel. So like if you're up on a high heel, that's the toe, and this is the heel. And this is just from my painting days. Most of you know I was a painter first. So I'm going to move these two out of the way and my pod. And I am going to grab that paper that had the colors on it, if I can figure out where I laid it. Okay, it's in plain sight. I know it is. There it is, under my tin, kind of plain sight. So then what I do next is I come in here, turn on some extra light for y'all, and I'm just going to soak it up. Do you see the water actually running? It's actually ran up into my brush. So my brush is wet. I'm going to wipe off that tip. Actually, that brush is still almost dry because it started out dry. Can you see how it's soaking up the water? Just soaks it up. Now it's really full, so I'm going to dab some of that off. I'm going to take off just the tip. Then I'm going to come over to our watercolor paint, and I'm going to swatch it. Okay, so I'm just going to swatch across. There's my new color. Dab off my brush, and if it had kept running, which it kind of is, I'm going to go over it one more time, and that just helps get rid of the extra water. And now I have another shade that is different than these. Okay, let's do one more. To clean my brush, I'm going to come in, just get it wet. I'm not doing this with the brush, okay? Don't beat it up. Don't beat that poor brush to pieces. And see, that's fairly clean. Okay, we got time to do one more? Yes. So now what we're going to do, yeah, see, and that part dried pretty quickly. I'll get a different palette knife out. And see this, see how it rubs off? Isn't that mat the neatest? My daughter got me my first craft mat, and I'm telling you, I love this thing. It's had hot glue on it, it's had paint on it, it's had Stickum from scrapbooking on it. You name it, it's probably had it on it. And yeah, just really, really a cool tool to keep on hand. The other thing I will do too is put some paper towels in my kit. Okay, I'm going to move this knife out of the way because that palette knife will get washed later. And let's do another purple. Let's go for our own purple mix. All right, and red is usually a color that will overtake anything. So let's try, ooh, that's a different way. 2 reds. And 1 blue. Let's just see what happens. And look, the consistency is different. Did you see that? And this is Prussian blue. So it's going to be different than if I had mixed with, say, aquamarine blue. That would have been different. Look how dark that is. Now, it is kind of hard to see what color that really is. Doesn't that look like just a nasty brown? All right. So, whatever it is, I think I'm going to go ahead and keep it. It's just really interesting. Let's see. I'm going to make up more of it though, because if it's going to go in my palette. Okay, and I did 2 reds and 1 blue. Even if that is just a brown, it's a cool brown. You know how to make some really cool gray or greens? I'll tell you. Hang on, don't make me talk and do this at the same time. There we go. That's about right. Gray and yellow. Yeah. Use different shades of gray with some yellow, and you can get some of the most cool looking army greens. Let me get this mixed. I'm sure my light on over here is helping to dry this up. And see, that did not make a really pretty purple, but I'm okay with that. Whatever it is. Like I said, some of this is just experimenting and seeing what I end up with. So we're going to scoop it up and plop it in. Tell you, making all the different pods was actually fun. I'm just tapping that a bit because I know some of that was not as mixed up as well. So, all right, let's see what we ended up with. Same brush and our water. And this time it was those. And the brush is already wet, so I don't have to soak up as much water this time. But I'm going to do just the tip. Let's see what we've got. Wow, that's a really dark purple. You see that? It's a really dark purple. Okay, now let me get my brush clean. Always clean your brush right away. I would say even if it's watercolor. I am big on spending more money on actual paints than brushes. So take care of your brushes. If the phone rings and you're in the middle of painting, put that brush in water. Yeah, just put it in some water. Okay, now what it's going to show you here, it's hanging on the wall. Let me grab it. If I can reach it, I can. All right. Look at that. That's the gray, and that's the yellow. If you add more, you mix the two, get your first green. Then if you add more gray to it, it goes here. More gray to it, more gray to this, it goes there. More gray to that, it goes there. Here's the original mix. If you add more yellow to it, you're going to get this. Add a little more yellow, you're going to get that. Add a little more yellow, you get that. Just a class I taught a long time ago in my various painting classes. But that's just something that has always stuck with me because I love the greens. All right, well, that is it. And you can see how that's drying. That's the second one right there. This is our first one. So play with color, just like we layer with our coloring pencils. Play, all right? Okay, I know this was different, but thanks for hanging out, and I will see you back in a few days. Bye.